welcome to the New Hampshire Insurance Department's monthly webinar. This month we'll be discussing insurance for farmers. We've got a few very special guests. Before we get started, I'd like to make just one quick housekeeping announcement, and that is that we're happy to entertain questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have any, please feel free to type them into the chat box and our experts will address them at the end of the program. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Commissioner DJ Betancourt.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it very much. As Andrew mentioned, my name is DJ Betancourt, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Insurance Department. And I want to begin this afternoon by thanking each of you for taking time out of your day to join us for this month's webinar. Whether you're a policyholder, a producer, a member of the agricultural community, or part of our broader insurance industry, your participation in today's discussion underscores the vital role that insurance plays in protecting not just property and livelihoods, but an entire way of life for many here in New Hampshire, and that's exciting. As Commissioner, I have the privilege of overseeing a diverse and dynamic insurance marketplace, and few sectors reflect that diversity and resilience better than our farming and agricultural communities. Farming, as a lot of you know, is a business built on risk, whether it's markets, whether it's the actual weather, supply chains. So much of it is outside of the farmer's control. And that's why strong, fair, and reliable insurance coverage is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity for those individuals. It allows farmers to endure a bad season, recover from disaster, and keep feeding our families and fueling our economy here in New Hampshire. So today's webinar is focused on farmers insurance, an important player, as I've mentioned, in our market. And our goal here, as it always is in our webinars, is simple, and that is to provide you with information in a transparent manner, making sure that we're communicating the most pertinent pieces of information that are of use to consumers, as well as to collaborate with the folks who have joined us here today. I think as Andrew mentioned or will mention, if you do have a question or comment, feel free to use the chat feature, and one of our subject matter experts will get to that. But in any event, I will turn it over to our presenters, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation today. So thank you.
Sorry. Hi there. So just real quick, talking about what UNH Extension is. Most people who are on this call probably know, but just in case you don't, UNH Extension covers 5 topic areas. The one we're focusing on today is obviously agriculture. So it's food and agriculture, community and economic development, natural resources, 4-H, youth development, and health and well-being. But we're going to focus on agriculture today. So our agriculture specialists use research-based information to give New Hampshire farmers and ag businesses the tools they need to succeed. We provide a wide range of resources such as workshops, twilight meetings, fact sheets, programs in person and online, on-farm consultations, and pest, plant, and soil diagnostics. So if you are a farmer and you are not hooked up with UNH Extension, please do yourself a favor and do your business a favor and contact your local county extension office and they can get you hooked up. For example, ag business management. If you have questions about whole farm succession planning, ag law, financial record keeping, sales and marketing, call your extension office. Dairy, livestock, and forage crops. We have specialists in all those areas. Food safety on the farm. I work in food safety at Extension for farms and for food service. And we have a whole team. Fruit and vegetable crops help with grapes and vineyards, berry crops, high tongue production, vegetable crops, orchards, and applied research to help with all of these crops. Greenhouse, nursery, and garden centers, landscaping, pest and disease, insect identification, plant disease and diagnostics, soil testing services, integrated pest management. It is a long list and I could keep going, but I'm going to stop because we want to get to this insurance information. Also, the last thing I want to mention is farmer support networks, including help with farmer stress. We have a women in agriculture program, and we also work with new farmers. So I'm going to let Caroline Beaton talk about new farmer school and new farmer programs that she's working on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline from UNH Extension. I'm the new Beginning Farmer Program Manager, and I just wanted to quickly mention that we have a brand new program called the Beginning Farmer Program, where we'll be offering a variety of programming that is covering everything you need to know as a new farmer, including record keeping, including production records, emergency planning, weather adaptation, soil health. Those are just a few of the topics that we're covering. And so if you're interested in being involved or just learning more about this program, you can reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat. We also just opened our registration for New Farmer School. This is an annual program that goes on every year from August to November. It is a 16-week-long program happening every other week where we offer in-person classes where we get to see farms and talk about different things that they are doing that you might want to consider as a new farmer. And we also have webinars where we go over things like building a business plan and financial statements. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to our website at the New Farmer page. You can find the registration there, or you can reach out to me for more info as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Luann King, and I work at the New Hampshire Insurance Department. I've been there for a little over 7 years. My role is supervisor for the P&C forms compliance. Basically, my team, we review any form that is issued to a New Hampshire consumer for any property and casualty line of business. We make sure that before the forms are actually used, they comply with all of New Hampshire's statutes and regulations. And we give guidance to obviously the companies ahead of time as to what they need to change in their forms so that they're compliant and they understand going into it. And so what I've done is I've taken this morning and longer, and I've reviewed some farming coverage forms and so forth. And I thought what I would do is I would use AJ's agenda and just kind of go down through the talking points. There have been some questions that have already been sent in that I have prepared answers for at the end. If by any chance I don't cover something within the presentation, please feel free to type your questions in the chat, and I'd like to get to those at the very end. So today we'd like to talk about how you can evaluate and improve your insurance coverage as your operations for farming grow and evolve. Obviously, there are a lot of different types of insurance for farmers that we need to talk about today. Let's start off with the product liability for farms. And basically, that is just what it says. It's going to provide coverage for financial losses from claims related to injuries or damages caused by farm products. The coverage is very crucial to farms that sell products directly to consumers. It helps cover costs associated with bodily injury, property damage, and even illness that could stem from some of those products. Additionally, coverage is available for legal fees, settlements, and judgments. So that's a really important consideration when you know how expensive legal costs can be today. And it's really important because such a loss could be devastating to a farmer if customers were to get sick from food or products that they sold. So that is exactly what product liability for farmers is and covers, and it's crucial. You know, I want to back up just for a second, and you're going to hear me say usually and generally a lot today. That doesn't mean that I don't necessarily know more information, but I wanted to just preface this by saying farm insurance is, while it is regulated, it is not a highly regulated line of business. And by that, I mean like personal auto, for example, has a lot of statutes and rules dedicated specifically to that. In other words, personal auto is probably, I would say, one of the highest regulated lines of business in New Hampshire, meaning that it is the most cookie cutter of the coverages for property and casualty because it's highly regulated. So the less regulated you are, the more differences you're going to see for insurance products in the industry. So companies write products differently to differentiate themselves from one another to draw in new business. But they still have to comply with all of there are statutes and regulations that do apply to them, which they do comply with. However, it's just not as tightly regulated. So for that reason, I have to say generally and usually, because reading all of the forms that do come through for farm owners, there is a vast difference. And I am sure that whatever your niche is, you're going to be able to find coverage, but it might be a little less popular among the companies as maybe something else. So you might have to, go to different agents or several different agents before you find one that does represent a company, an insurance company that offers the coverages that you need for your specific farming operations. So I should have started by that. So you're going to hear me say generally and usually a lot. And the reason for that is because of the wide variety of coverages that are available in the market. As DJ pointed out, we have a lot of options. We are a very vibrant market for farmers in New Hampshire. I can tell you that just from reading all the different forms. So that was product liability. Obviously, crop liabilities is just exactly what it says it is. It's going to cover the farmers from protection against losses due to natural disasters, price fluctuation, or unforeseen events that impact crop yields or revenues. And it helps the farmers, mitigate the financial risks along with the operations that they're faced with in adverse conditions. I'm not going to get too deeply involved in crop because there are a lot of, there are a lot of coverages that are available from multi-peril crop insurance, yield protection, revenue protection, whole farm revenue protection, and so forth. But just know that that exists if that is what you need for your specific farming operation. Then I'm just going to shake it up a little bit. This might not go in exact order of AJ's agenda, but I am going to cover everything. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between homeowner products and farm owner products because there are a lot of similarities. The homeowner, product is going to cover your home, your outbuildings, your personal property, and your loss of use, your liability, and your med pay. Exactly the same as farmers. The difference is if you have a farming operation, most homeowner policies are very conservative with what they allow for coverage when you start making your living in the farming field. So they're going to have exclusions and restrictions. That's where the farm owner's policy would come in because it's going to give you all of the coverages I've already explained, your homeowner, your outbuildings, personal property, loss of use, and your liability in med pay. In addition to that, it's going to give you everything that you would need for the farming side of your operations, meaning your silos, your barns, all of your farming buildings, all of your farming equipment, business equipment, and so forth like that. And it's going to also expand for the liability because your liability is going to be restrictive on your homeowner policy, what they're going to allow you to do from a liability standpoint, what they're going to cover, I should say, not allow you to do, but what they're going to cover. So your farm owners is going to be, it's like what I like to say, it's like a homeowner and a BOP kind of came together and they made a farm owner's policy. So you're going to get all of that protection. If you have that, if you do go into the farming operation, you do need to have that conversation with your agent and let them know so that they can provide you with adequate coverage because you don't want to find out after a claim has occurred that you didn't have coverage for something. So the message I want to make sure that you understand from today's webinar is that your agent should be your best friend when it comes to your farming operations because your farming operations can be so unique from, vineyards to produce to livestock it could go on and on, beekeeping, the whole 9 yards. So you need to have that conversation with your agent beforehand. Tell them what you plan to do, how big of an operation you plan to have, what foot traffic, if any, on your property, all of it, so that they can customize your policy. So you're not paying for coverage that you don't need, but you are getting the coverage that you do need in the event of a loss. And throughout the policy period, if you need to transition to something different, make sure you have that conversation with your agent before that transition happens so that changes can be made accordingly. And now back to the coverages. So then we were on the property coverage. That's where I deviated and I said, let's talk about the difference between homeowners and farm. So we've already covered, your dwelling, your personal property, and so forth, your farm structures. And we're going to skip right down to your liabilities. So this is, again, telling your agent if you have foot traffic on your property or not, because that is going to make a difference, which brings me a little bit into the workers' comp side of things, because there are two coverages I'd like to talk about today. The workers' comp and employer's liability, the farmer's employer's liability. So basically, New Hampshire law mandates workers' compensation for nearly all employers, including those in agriculture. And that includes employees, even family members that are working on the farm. There are some exemptions, which I'm not going to go too deeply into them, but a business owner who is a sole proprietor would not be required to cover themselves, but they may choose to. The difference between workers' comp and farm employers' liability is that the workers' compensation is a state-sponsored insurance program that provides medical benefits and lost wages to employees that suffer work-related injuries or illnesses, regardless of who is at fault. And every employer, including farms, need to have that. I want to stress that. The farm employer's liability coverage protects the farm employer from legal liability when an employee's injury is not covered by workers' comp. And it comes into play when a workers' compensation claim is deemed insufficient by the employee, or they allege the employer's negligence contributed to their injuries and sue for additional damages. And sometimes it's called Part 2 coverage on the workers' comp. So I'm not going to tell you need one, the other, or both. This is when you have that conversation with your agent and make sure that for what fits you, what you're doing, you have the adequate coverage that you need. Remember that commercial auto is important for farmers, and that's not really what we're focusing on today. That kind of takes care of itself in the commercial auto realm. And if you want that extra layer of liability protection, there's always farmers umbrella and excess coverage, which just goes above and beyond the liability limits that you choose for your coverage, your primary coverage or your base layer. It can expand just the liability coverage if you feel that you need that. And it kind of is like an umbrella, and that's going to go over all of your liability coverages that we've talked about today, such as your commercial auto and your farming operations and so forth. So that's just that extra layer of protection. You may or may not need it depending on how large or small your operation is and how high your limits are on your primary base layer. Then the next thing on AJ's agenda was how to adapt your insurance coverage to match your business expansion, public access, agritourism, for example, and partnerships. Those were really good questions that kind of came in. Let me just see if I can pull up those questions here quickly. So I'm just going to jump into some of the questions. What risks does having the public on my property raise for agritourism? That was their question. And so anytime there's foot traffic on a premise, there's a liability concern. Basic things like, is the area in which the public will be traveling easy to navigate for everyone, or are there potential slip or trip hazards? Why is the public on your premise? These are questions that you need to share with your agent, because that answer could lead to specific liability concerns, which would require specific endorsements to provide coverage. How often do you have foot traffic? Is it apple picking season only? Is it year round? Is it in the wintertime for like horse-drawn carriage rides? For what purpose and so forth like that. So that is going to help your agent pick and choose which coverages you need. Your policy is always going to start out with a base. And on the base, if there are coverages that you don't need, they could attach an endorsement that's going to exclude that coverage, which will help lower your premium. That was another question we got. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. And then on the flip side of that, if your base does not cover the specific area that you need coverage for, there are endorsements or buyback coverages, as we call them, that the agent can add, so that at the end of the day, you're paying for everything that you need and you're not paying for anything that you don't need through endorsements. The next question that came in is, how do insurance needs change when you have public on your property? The first thing that comes to my mind is liability. you need to make sure that you have all of the protections that you need for liability, whether that means signage, warning, whatever your agent recommends, your insurance company recommends. Chances are they're going to come out and do an inspection, and they might have what they call recommendations for you to comply with. They're going to give you time to do that if necessary, if any are needed. And that is going to give your insurance company the peace of mind that says that you're doing everything that you can within your power to make your property as safe as possible. And in turn, they're going to offer you the coverages that you need to protect yourself for that liability risk. The next question was really interesting. Does having a liability waiver reduce the risk? That's the answer I'm going to say is possibly. I'm not sure if having a sign that says, danger, this could be treacherous, or this could be slippery, or something like that. I don't know that that is an ironclad way to stop any and all liability claims. Certainly wouldn't be bad, but I don't know that it's like, hey, I don't need liability because I put up a sign. I would never, ever go that far. The next question, insurance needs when you have volunteers or employees. I love this question. This is like one of my favorite questions because the word volunteer is really, it's going to come down to the policy that you end up with. How is the word volunteer defined? I took some time this morning and I did some searches in the forms that we've approved for use. Sometimes a volunteer is in the definition of insured. Sometimes it's in the definition of additional insured. Sometimes it's in the definition of employee. And it really comes down to what policy you have. You really need to read your policy and make sure that you understand it. If you don't understand it, you should have a conversation with your agent. They should be able to sit down with you and your policy, go through the whole thing, and make sure that you walk away with a complete understanding. And if for some reason you don't, we are here. We are a resource, and I think AJ might be speaking to that later in this presentation. We are always here to help you through any insurance questions that you might have. We are kind of subject matter experts, although we are very neutral. We can't say go to X agent and ask for X company and get X product. We can just tell you generally this product is available. If your specific agent doesn't deal with a company that offers exactly what you need, another agent might represent different companies that do cater to that type of exposure. So always shop, shop, shop. That's always my advice. It doesn't hurt to shop. Let's see. What insurance needs are there when you are working with a partner and using the property of one of the partners? Is the other partner liable, and how does insurance protect both? This is really going to come down to, again, how the policy is written. Are the partners both named insured on the policy? Does each partner have its own policy, and how do they work together? Like which one is coming in, primary or excess over the other one? Whose land is it? Is really like, are you leasing the land? Is it an insured contract? These are all legalities that your specific contract your insurance contract will explain and define and outline. And again, knowing ahead of time where you are in that is critical. Is homeowners insurance adequate for farm business? I'm going to say most of the time, no. Homeowner carriers are, in my opinion, conservative when it comes to farming. There are some that allow some very small farming. If you were to sell, I'm just going to make something up on the spot. Like if you were to sell produce at the end of your driveway in an honor system, you just put out your produce and there's a cash box. They might say if your revenue is less than X, they'll keep it on your homeowner policy. They'll make coverages and stuff like that. But generally speaking, your homeowner does not cover the bigger farming operations. So my answer to that question would be no. Why a homeowner's policy probably doesn't give you the coverage you think it does. I said as my answer, you need to read and understand your policy ahead of time, or have your agent or us help you with that so that you know what is or what isn't covered. You know that you have the option to buy back coverages for things that are excluded if the company offers that buyback option by way of endorsements. The homeowner policy then does provide the coverage that you think it does. It's going to be very limited when it comes to the farming side of things, I'm sure. And then we did kind of go through all of the product liability. This is a really good question. There are so many different types of insurance: crop insurance, property insurance, liability, workers' comp. How do you know what is right during the startup phase of your business? I'm going to throw this back to, so Mary said specifically that there are programs through the extension for startups, and that would be a really good resource, I think, for you. As far as from an agent's, from an insurance perspective, your agent is going to be your best resource. And then we're here if you need to clarify anything that you might not have understood from your agent. How do you know when to increase coverage as the business grows? That's having regular conversations with your agent. And generally speaking, if you have told your agent everything up front at the beginning of the policy, and through the policy period, everything has kind of stayed status quo, probably you only need to revisit it at renewal just to make sure, just touch in with your agent and say, hey, you know, we're coming up for, you know, I just got my renewal offer. Just want to make sure that everything's on track and everything like that. She'll ask you, or she or he'll ask you if there have been any changes to your operations and so forth. And it's at that time, it's really convenient to just make some tweaks at the upcoming renewal. And like I said before, if you start off in one direction and then you need to pivot, you need to have that conversation right then with your agent so that adjustments can be made right then. What are the important questions a farm business owner should ask an insurance agent when shopping for the best policy for their situation? I personally would want to know how much experience my agent has in the farming side of the insurance operation, and what companies they represent. Like, how involved are the companies? Like, do they have agricultural lines of business that they actually cater to farmers? Not all companies are going to offer all products. So that would be what and then, you know, how comfortable you are with your agent. I mean, you need to have that trust level because you should be in really close communication with your agent as things change. Trustedchoice.com is a really good resource. I think AJ may have put some, he might be speaking to that later in the presentation, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but trustedchoice.com is a really good resource. The Big I is a good resource. Asking others that are that are doing the same thing you're doing. Like, who do you have your insurance with? Do you like your agent? Are you happy with your company? Have you had any claims issues? That type of thing. Which companies are better, local or national, and which are more familiar with agriculture? The insurance department, we don't really say, stay away from this company, go to this company. All of the forms that are approved for use have met compliance standards and are legal. Again, shopping and talking to your neighbors might be the best way to pick which company you feel or agency you feel most comfortable with. Things to keep in mind when shopping for a policy. I mean, you just need to tell your agent what you're doing, how much, when, and keep them informed. Size of your outbuildings is important, so you have proper coverage. Machinery, livestock, you know, personal property. Make sure that your limits are what you want. Ask about exclusions. If you don't need something, see if you can get an exclusion to lower your premium. Ask about endorsements to buyback coverage. Use the renewal window to shop your insurance to compare other options. That's pretty much what I had for my presentation. I think I'm going to throw it back to AJ at this point to see if we have any questions in the chat or anything like that. AJ?
Well, it's Andrew. We do have a few
questions
in the chat. No, that's okay. We've got a few questions. The first question is someone asks about the difference between replacement and actual value of covered property, and how does co-insurance clause come into the set of choices? Excellent question.
So yes, policies are not required to pay one way or the other. So replacement cost, right? I'm just going to say a product that has a life expectancy of 10 years, 5 years in, you have a covered claim. if you have replacement cost, you are going to be able to replace that product. So what happens is the company will pay. If you have replacement cost, the company is going to pay you actual cash value. In my example, it's 5 years old. It's got a 10-year life expectancy. They're going to pay you half of what it costs. They pay you that. Then you go out and you replace it and you give them the receipts. They're going to pay you the difference, the other half, so that basically when the dust settles, they have paid you replacement cost, but they're just going to pay you ACV up front, and then you give them the receipts to show them that you replaced the product, and then you get the difference. Or your policy might settle on actual cash value, which means 10 years old, 5 years covered loss, you're going to get half. They don't care if you replace it or not. They're not there. They have settled the claim according to the contract. So make sure you understand when you're talking with your agent, what is important to you? Is it important that you get replacement cost? Obviously, it's a little bit of a higher premium, but it's going to be, it's going to be up to you at the time of the claim. Do you want just what it's worth, or do you want to be able to actually replace that? So that's the difference. And then the second part of your question was coinsurance, which means coinsurance is the part of the loss or the covered claim that the insured is responsible for before the insurance company is obligated to pay. Similar to like a self-insured retention, a deductible, that type of thing. It's going to be spelled out. It's not a surprise when the claim occurs. It's going to be spelled out in your contract. Go ahead and take a look at that and know in every instance, what are you responsible for, so that you know when this happens, I have to have this much liquid assets available, so that then if anything above that, anything covered above that, then the insurance company just pays that difference.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Luann, before you go any further, can you explain to people the difference between agent and broker?
Yes. So an agent or a producer is representing the company. A broker generally represents the person, the insured.
Okay, perfect. And what type of insurance do folks need to protect themselves against environmental hazards or pollution?
That's a big one. So that's a big one, and it's going to vary by what policy you have. So pollution, chemicals, different companies are more comfortable. Some companies are more comfortable than others in providing that pollution protection. Definitely, if you're working with pesticides or anything like that, chemicals of any kind, having that conversation with your agent to make sure that they are aware of that and quote you with the companies that have, if you're interested in that coverage, have the ability to let you buy that back, because generally pollution is excluded, and it's a buyback coverage, because not all farming operations have that component to them, depending on what they are doing. So it's a buyback. Make sure that they're aware of it, that you are asking them to quote you with companies that have the buyback for pollution or chemicals that you're using.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got a question regarding workers' comp, and Rich asks, can you please elaborate on employer's liability option over the standard workers' comp policy? Is it an additional rider, and do some company policies include it as a standard?
Okay, so when I was doing some research this morning, like, how is it incorporated in the base? Is it a buyback? What I found more often was that it was a buyback, the employer's liability. And really all of them are saying in the contract, like, it's not an overlap. Like, your employer's liability is not going to duplicate your workers' comp. So it's, if the incident is covered by workers' comp, your employer's liability isn't going to trigger. But in the instance that it isn't covered by workers' comp and you're facing a lawsuit, that could be the differentiator between financial loss or not, because they're different. They're not going to, it doesn't replace the other. They work together and your agent is going to be your absolute best resource for that. Tell them what your exposures are, like how many employees you have, what they're doing, all of it, and they will guide you whether or not what you need to protect yourself.
Okay, fantastic. Do you have any closing thoughts, or are there any closing thoughts from our other guests? Okay. Commissioner, do you have any closing thoughts or remarks?
Sure. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. I want to thank our colleagues over at the UNH Cooperative Extension for joining us as well. Obviously, today's webinar is focused on farmers insurance and the types of coverages that farmers or others in our agricultural community should be thinking very, very carefully about. But our goal with these webinars is always the same, which is transparency, communication, and collaboration. And whether you have questions about claims, concerns about coverage, or feedback about what you're experiencing out there in the market, on the ground, in real life, whatever term you want to use, we want to hear about that. We want to hear about that not only so that we can be the best advocate and provider of information to you, but also so that we can understand what trends, what developments are taking place in the market that we need to be aware of. And it also, of course, helps us to understand how we can best tailor the information and the tools to provide you as the consumer, to give you the empowerment that you need to make the best choices in terms of your coverage, whether it be for yourself, your family, or for your business. And we know that conversations like this are only the beginning. Our department is committed to continuous engagement. And so if you have an idea for a webinar, a future webinar, please do let us know. We want to form these good, close, tight relationships. And it was a real pleasure to focus in today on New Hampshire's agriculture community. They are obviously an important player in our market and in New Hampshire's overall economy. So we really appreciate you all joining us, and I appreciate the team here for picking a great topic.